list of smears, then they aired them out on every station. And it turns out no one wants to hear the truth of who they praised as being worthy of such bloated liberal celebration. That no one wants to really know the person they've so valiantly defended, even when it meant they had to gloat and shit all over someone braver than they'd be if given the occasion. Now cue the faceless comment squad invasion. Cue those fuckers crawling out the woodwork to come analyze the way you wore your hair and what you wear. Like your appearance waives your rights, or that somehow you're the reason for your situation. Somehow they've decided you should bear responsibility for what such monstrous men insist on doing. Somehow they're deluded by the empty, hypocritical, and useless fucking platitudes that bastard keeps on spewing. And I think it's very telling that the best of their excuses when they try to come and justify our president's abuses is a hearty butt Trump. In which case I'll remind you that you never saw the news attempt to sell us Donald Trump like he was morally upstanding or a decent human. But when Joe says something bigoted or ogles someone's little kid, CNN says, isn't this refreshing? Biden's like a mix of JFK and FDR with all the finer parts of Harry Truman. Christ, I know that they don't think that we're the brightest, but at least pretend we got a couple lumens. Ask yourself if you have ever questioned what they fed you, or do you just shut your eyes and then consume it? And now ask yourself if you ate every one of Biden's lies under guise of harm reduction and the promise of a slight improvement. And now imagine long ago that Biden chose to show you who he really was by traumatizing you for his amusement. Now imagine that you watched him touch a Bible with those filthy hands, and then assume the power of the highest seat in all the land, of knowing your attacker wields a global coalition born of three-letter agencies who'll make a life's mission out of trying to discredit you through lies, damn lies, and collusion. Big tech is never gonna separate from our surveillance state. Fuck's sakes, they're just a breath away from total fusion. So there will come a time where even if you see the light, your voice will never reach the sky through all the bots and all the noise pollution. So trust us when we tell you that the masking of abuses is perhaps this country's oldest institution. And I know nothing nobler than facing it in honor of the truth when you know that the people holding power have been neutralizing truth since there was wet ink on the Constitution. So know that Tara's truth is something crucial to the movement. And if you see yourself a partner to the revolution, help this country see through all the baseless propaganda through the crux of Joe's illusions. And recognize that Tara Reid gave everything she had so she could tell us what the truth is. Recognize the decent thing to do when someone bears their soul and shows their bruises is not to ask for context or offer up your own solutions. Your job is just to listen with an honest mind and put yourself on Tara's side a moment so you understand the path she chooses. That there is no instant fame worth the dragging of your name. And if that's what you think, you've a lot to learn about the kind of facts the mob can handle and the kind that it refuses. You've a lot to learn about the news and all its many uses. Guess you've yet to learn the truth the news will serve as fruit from which they've squeezed out all the juices. And we all eat the husk and just pretend it's full of nutrients and isn't really useless. But the jaws of our ability to yield accountability are absolutely toothless. So don't you kid yourself that any lips are being loosened. They won't ever tell us where the bodies are or show us where the proof is. It's on you to recognize the lechery our president so regularly oozes. It's on you to muster up some honesty and ask yourself how Biden won your trust, but it's America that loses. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises. March of Dimes. Family fun run cancer bonanza. Front page of Apartheid Times. all of the charm of a car bomb. Arms wide open, taking no targets alive. Dark was the night, save for a red glow painting the sky in a sickening light. Like a scene out of hell or a day in an utterly alien life. When the fire runs wild, these are the years where the wild is more your daily drive. To wrestle the truth of extinction from out of the jaws of your pride. So open them wide, now is the time, there's nothing to fight. Blasted or sworn to defy, the end is the same and we're inches away from the line. So abandon your ego to die, the bed that we made is where we go to die. But never was passing in one's own sleep such a hideous sight. Such a storm of convulsion and bile expulsion from out of our mouths and our eyes. But these are the rights they implored us to exercise, with our signature forged and our hands all tied. And with eye contact and a senator's smile, they thank you for saving democracy right as they tighten the binds. Right when they're joining your chain to your neighbors, leading you out in a line. Call it the March of Dimes. One more charity parody. Hold back grants while we dance for the president's salary. Funding the bunkers where all of the wealthy will cower to witness our steepest decline. To err is a trait so inherently human. And to hoard enough wealth that you peacefully sleep when those humans are burning alive is truly divine. If divinity really means withered and fully decaying inside, you could live with yourself till you run out of wine and ring for a drone off a prime. Skim a little off at the top of the March of Dimes. Sign of our system of capital, head to the sky with a hideous cry that mimics the suffering families out on the street that have built a career out of passing by, who were part of the great design, part of a citizen base with its fate resigned, part of a two-party system where both of the goals align, and the end result is more housing crisis than the plot device of 2009. Capitalism demanded a sacrifice, so I walk to the square, hand them my son, and they hand me the dice. I roll for his life. To an equal extent, you could say I was rolling for mine. I'd called any favor, I paid any bribe. But it's all up to me for the roll, so I close my eyes. And the sound of the crowd is the same for a 1 or a 5. Two equal outcomes playing as though they're on opposite sides. And I know in my heart that on 4 out of 6 he'll be fine. But I can't seem to roll them, I can't let them go, I'm just holding them tight. I'm just holding them tight. I can't seem to roll them, I can't let them go, I'm just holding them tight. I'm just holding them tight. I can't seem to roll them, I can't let them go, I'm just holding them tight. I'm just holding them tight. Nah, I can't seem to roll them, I can't let them go, I'm just holding them tight. I'm just holding them tight.
You know, sir, I like you much better with my glasses off.
I guess I was born with the curse of foresight, 'cause I knew Joe was only gonna represent the war side. And that said, I just came to fight. You could keep the or flight. Save the surprise and the gasp when the shadow of the fascists have cast is on your doorstep in the glow of your porch light. Save the surprise when the grid goes down and we go underground to lick wounds in the gloom of a torchlight. While up in the sky, a blimp glides by with a sign like New Year's 2022. Brought to you jointly by Pfizer and Coors Light. While the centrists observe from a comfortable courtside, right in the thick of the action behind a partition. We're in a morbid position, a plague of evictions, born a comorbid condition of the cancer of wealth. I fantasize that I cancel myself, hands on your head, throw your best laid plans in the well. There are no more answers, questions go back on the shelf. All Joe's donors, a quick show of hands. How many of you subbed to the Lockheed Martin OnlyFans? How many are loyalist patrons for the Raytheon Patreon? Occupy Iraq and send 1 million off into the great beyond. Cool yourself with the safety on. True to yourself in as much as you dutifully spew out a mucus of QAnon. You can't convince me the capital wasn't surrendered with every intention of digging us deeper down into the treacherous webbing of censorship, ebbing your speech and dissension so you can't hold Biden accountable. Not in his mentions and not in the streets. No to the end that Joe will defend the elite. Joe won't embarrass McConnell, but Joe's not embarrassed if all of your children are hungry and weak. Too hungry to speak. Too hungry to stand, they just lie at his feet. Joe is fresh out of empathy, fresh out of policy, but he'd love to know, what was your favorite ice cream flavor to eat? Back when you used to eat. I guess the road isn't rocky for people who thought we were free. They'll believe what they read, and Joe's here to lull them to sleep. Counting us down by the dozens, the culling of gullible sheep, led to the slaughter by media tyrants and government thieves. These are the leeches that stubbornly suck where there's nothing to bleed. These are the tumors that force us to crawl on our knees. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. My lips, brand new taxes, starving all the billionaires and neutering their Visa Maxes. Topple Congress off their axis, mobilize the homeless, give them axes, call it praxis. Chop a couple limbs off the legislative branches. We'll show you the difference between air as a human right and guaranteed oxygen access. Octogenarians who barely know what day it is are culling countless citizens while sitting on a dais made of ignorance that was built on the graves of the slaves made to labor for its self-declared significance. And all to build a Congress full of millionaires who make their fortunes insider trading while they shit on all the indigent. So I got a bone to pick with our leaders, and I'll start with the ligaments. Pick right through the muscle, dig the marrow out, and serve it to the unhoused millions living in their minivans or watching their belongings get evicted from their tenement. I have a dream where we breach the walls of Congress and just let them in. And what happens next will survive in only text, cause there won't be any evidence. There will only be that heavy kind of feeling that pervades a space where there has been a reckoning and you can feel its remnants. Let any man who enters seeking power know that those who came before him suffocated on their eminence. That there once was a seal on the wall, but we quartered it and scattered all the pieces that it might prevent its semblance. And so we end the great experiment. We'll take all your billions, leave you 2 coins for the ferryman. Leave you drifting on a Dutchman floating derelict among the wretched seraphim. For holy is the hand that wiped the land clean of those who pose as gentlemen. That's my time, honey. Cue the thunderclap and strike the theremin. And so we end the great experiment. Give you 2 coins for the fairy.
One.
And all that. And I am so happy because I have Sabrina Salvati, or as she's known, Sabby Sabs, with me today. Hi, Sabby.
Hi, Tara.
I feel like doing the doobie-doo, doobie-doo. Because I love your theme song, and we both got theme songs from Jessie Jett.
Yeah, I know. Jessie's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Really great. So you've been doing some really great coverage of all the craziness that's in our world right now and the stuff that they are trying to get us to accept right now from the US government. And it's amazing. It's amazing. I actually just wanted to get your view on something, and Reef, I think you had it, but I was trying to share, of course, that you were going to be on the show. So I was trying to share that with everyone. And then on Twitter, and then I shared the Russian President Putin's speech today about, why they're having their military operation, their conflict in Ukraine, and his views on this. And you think that the world would want to know, but I immediately got shadow banned, and you can't really see the tweets. So we're going to have his little speech on the show, and I was hoping you could watch it with me, and then we could talk about it right after, if that's cool.
All right, let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
Вы сражаетесь за наших людей на Донбассе, за безопасность нашей Родины, России. Россия всегда выступала за создание системы равной и неделимой безопасности. Системы, которая жизненно необходима всему мировому сообществу. В декабре прошлого года мы предложили заключить договор о гарантиях безопасности. Россия призывала Запад к честному диалогу, к поиску разумных, компромиссных решений, к учету интересов друг друга. Все напрасно. Страны НАТО не захотели нас услышать. А это значит, что на самом деле у них были совершенно другие планы. И мы это видели. В открытую шла подготовка к очередной карательной операции на Донбассе, к вторжению на наши исторические земли, включая Крым. В Киеве заявляли о возможном приобретении ядерного оружия. Блок НАТО начал...
Before this
Okay.
Zoom, I just have to sign out and make a new meeting. Hold on one second. In meeting for all. And then hold on, everybody. Sorry. We'll bring them right back in just a moment. I just have to sign out because I have to sign back into the Indie News Network. And then one moment.
Recording in progress.
Where's it at? Why can I not see it? Participants invite. There we go. Copy invite link here. And give this to Miss Tara. And then Miss Sabby. And we're just going to restart everything. Hold on.
Recording stopped.
Hey everyone, we had a little tech difficulty, but hey, we're back. And thanks to Reef, so thank you, Reef. So yeah, see what happens when you try to play stuff that the Empire doesn't want you to play, right? Actually, I think it was our tech issue. It wasn't the Empire this time. But thanks for those of you that stayed and didn't leave. We're back. And let's try that again, Reef, if you want to bring up the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and he was explaining his position.
Вы сражаетесь за наших людей на Донбассе, за безопасность нашей Родины, России. Россия всегда выступала за создание системы равной и неделимой безопасности. Системы, которая жизненно необходима всему мировому сообществу. В декабре прошлого года мы предложили заключить договор о гарантиях безопасности. Россия призывала Запад к честному диалогу, к поиску разумных, компромиссных решений, к учету интересов друг друга. Все напрасно. Страны НАТО не захотели нас услышать. А это значит, что на самом деле у них были совершенно другие планы. И мы это видели. В открытую шла подготовка к очередной карательной операции на Донбассе, к вторжению на наши исторические земли, включая Крым. В Киеве заявляли о возможном приобретении ядерного оружия. Блок НАТО начал активное военное освоение прилегающих к нам территорий. Таким образом, планомерно создавалась абсолютно неприемлемая для нас угроза, причем непосредственно у наших границ. Россия дала упреждающий отпор агрессии. Это было вынужденное, своевременное и единственно правильное решение. Решение суверенной, сильной, самостоятельной страны. Соединенные Штаты Америки, особенно после распада Советского Союза, заговорили о своей исключительности, унижая тем самым не только весь мир, но и своих сателлитов, которым приходится делать вид, что они ничего не замечают, и покорно все это проглатывать. Но мы другая страна. У России другой характер. Мы никогда не откажемся от любви к родине, от веры и традиционных ценностей, от обычаев предков, от уважения ко всем народам и культурам. А на Западе эти тысячелетние ценности, судя по всему, решили отменить. Такая нравственная деградация стала основой циничных фальсификаций истории Второй мировой. Мы чтим всех воинов союзнических армий, американцев, англичан, французов, участников сопротивления, отважных солдат и партизан Китая, всех, кто разгромил нацизм и милитаризм. Уважаемые товарищи, сегодня ополченцы Донбасса вместе с бойцами армии России сражаются на своей земле. Вы сражаетесь за Родину, за ее будущее, за то, чтобы никто не забыл уроков Второй мировой, чтобы в мире не было места палачам, карателям и нацистам.
Okay. So, that was interesting. And Reef, I heard your sigh. I know that's how everyone feels, right? It's sad that today is Victory Day, celebrated in Europe and in Russia, recognizing the people that fought valiantly against the Nazis in World War II. And so this is a very major holiday for Russia because they lost 27 million people during World War II. So every single person in Russia had a relative that was touched, by the war. And there's been a lot of revisionist history. So Sabby, what did you think hearing what he had to say? What was your kind of initial thoughts?
Well, interesting. He was denouncing Nazism,
Yeah.
which I don't hear that much coming from the United States government. I just hear them making a lot of excuses as for why they're giving Ukraine more money. And I just saw a recent post actually before we went live that Joe Biden's going to try to send more weapons to Ukraine. So,
are you serious?
Oh yeah, I just saw another post about it.
Oh my goodness. We just gave them 2 days ago 130 million.
Yeah, they really want Ukraine to win. I don't think Ukraine is going to win. I just think at this point they need to just give up.
No.
But there's already some messages coming out from Times Square. I also saw pictures about this as well, where they were advertising like basically to be against this day in Russia.
Oh, but Russia was one of the main reasons why World War II was won, was the Russians. Yeah.
Yep.
And there's been a lot of revisionist history about that. I know I saw a snarky tweet about Germany. They said Germany's mad at Russia again. Yeah, they were. They lost World War II. But yeah, so what is your thought about one thing that struck me about this speech was he was saying, about the American exceptionalism. Did you catch that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, basically what he's kind of alluding to, I think if you remember his speech in 2007, he was talking about how the West was forcing this unipolar world where the world was multipolar as far as economic, growth and things that were going on, meaning China and India and other countries that were developing and becoming, more powerful and viable economically and growing. And the West just won't allow it, just like the way Nord Stream 2 was shut down, right?
Right. Well, the United States government doesn't want another economic competitor,
Right.
period. Like that's why they're trying to shut down China, Russia, anyone that they see as competition for them. They don't want other countries to be able to fend for themselves. They don't want other countries to have their own resources. We steal a lot of resources from other countries. So the idea that the United States government wants to be number one,
Mm-hmm.
and anyone who comes anywhere near close to that, which China is close.
Mm-hmm.
China is very close. And at some point, they're going to pass us.
And they're not imperialistic.
Right. Right. But the United States government, the talking points that they have, they make this seem like that's a bad thing. If we're not number one, then that's bad. Any country that is trying to challenge us in reference to economic power, they are seen as the villain. And the American people buy into it. Every time they buy into the propaganda. It was just like 2 years ago, I started hearing people say, we need to watch out for China. They can't pass us. And I'm like, why? Why do we need to be number one? So I think back on some of the things that I was taught, like when I was growing up in school, and there was this idea that America was supposed to be the greatest, the best country in the world. And everybody else who tried to challenge that, we needed to stop them. Right. Yeah. Well, one thing that I've noticed about your show is that you've been very out front about the imperialism, about being anti-war, about,
really examining some of the positions. And I've noticed that you've been growing and growing, but have you gotten any pushback for your messaging or any censoring or deplatforming at all? Or have you been able to bypass that so far?
Most of the pushback I get has been on Twitter. Like, to be honest with you, it's usually like on Twitter, sometimes on Facebook, although people don't really read as much when it comes to like imperialism on Facebook. Like, people don't, most of the time they don't look at that. But in reference to censorship, some of my videos have been marked as limited instead of like full monetization. I do have one video that was demonetized. But it is what it is. I think I'm a little bit more careful about it. I don't put it in the title. Even when I talked about Black volunteers going to Ukraine and the Peace Corps, the warning that was coming from the Peace Corps, I just put in the title, Peace Corps warns Black volunteers. So I think, there's certain things that the bots like will look for in reference to these videos. The title is a big giveaway, I think. And then also you have to be careful about how you talk about it. So there's ways to talk about it, but like to get your point across, but talking around it in a sense. But then
being creative,
also I think it's different too, because I don't talk about it every day. And I think, I think that's why they came after Jackson Hinkle, because he talks about it almost every day. Larger channels tend to be exempt from this. I've noticed, like, for example, TYT can talk about this and they're fine. Breaking Points can talk about it. Majority Report can talk about it, but they usually come after the smaller channels in reference to censorship.
Yeah, because we'll have less loud voices when we, what I like about it too, is you were calling out the racism that's inherently been part of the messaging about this war, about this proxy war that the US is fighting against Russia using Ukraine. So talk a little bit about that, like about just kind of what you've seen as far as the racism that's been blatant and subtle.
I think what a lot of people don't know, and I was talking to my parents about this as well, is the way that Black people and other people of color are treated in Ukraine. So there were a group of African students. They were trying to get on the train to get out of Ukraine right before this conflict really took off.
Right.
And the train and the engineers would not let them get on. They would only let white people get on. And it wasn't just like the African students, it was also other students that were from India, and they're there just to study, like in Ukraine. So they were just trying to leave and get back to their home country because they didn't want to be there when things got worse. They were told they couldn't get on. And there's several videos online about this as well. Someone actually had sent that to me. That's how I found out about it. And I did more research about it. And they were talking about just their experiences, their overall experiences, like living there as a student. And what people may not realize, when you go to Europe, and I lived in Europe, there is a big difference, I think, from living in Germany and living in Ukraine. It's the culture is different. The people are different. In Ukraine, they're not used to seeing Black people. Whereas like in Germany, they're a little bit more used to it because there's so many military bases over there, right?
Right.
But they're not used to seeing Black people in Ukraine, and their idea of what Black people are like is based on what they see through media.
Oh, wow.
And on TV and movies. Same thing for South Korea. My dad lived in South Korea, and he talked about his experiences there as well. Same thing. So because of that, they have this mindset that Black people are like what they see in the movies or what they see in TV. We're all criminals, lazy, those kinds of things. So they can be really hostile towards you. And what I saw on the Peace Corps website, they were warning Black volunteers, telling them, these are the things that you may experience when you go to Ukraine, and here's how you can handle it. And I went through all those things like on my show, and I was just like, just don't go volunteer there. Like, it's not worth it for you to have to go through all those loopholes.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And, and also I remember when it was first breaking out, I remember the reporters were trying to get people on board with, virtue signaling, the blue and yellow flags, and like, whatever, and galvanizing around the refugee population that was leaving Ukraine. And they were saying things like, oh, well, these are people that look like you and me and have Netflix accounts. Someone said that. And I thought that was just so, it was classist and racist and just stupid, ignorant.
Right.
But it was,
they were saying that they have, they were saying they have blonde hair and blue eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've been trying to do is educate people about these conflicts in other countries where there's people of color that most people don't know about. So most people I've spoken to don't know about what's going on in Yemen. They don't know about Somalia. They know a little bit about Afghanistan, but not to the extent that the US put sanctions on people there and people are starving. They don't know that part.
1 million children are going to be starving in this year. And how many, I mean, in Yemen, you mentioned how many children casualties? It was an astounding number, of casualties.
It was a lot. I don't remember offhand, but I remember I was showing people pictures of what's happening in Yemen because they didn't believe me. They're like, if this is true, why am I not hearing about this on the news? And I said, because Saudi Arabia are the ones who are attacking them, and the United States government gave Saudi Arabia the weapons to do so. That's why they're not talking about it. So when I see the blue and yellow flags in people's bios, it takes me back to like, I really hate when people commercialize war.
Right.
And we have a tendency to do that in this country, and not just war, but just tragedy, period. I remember this happening after 9/11. It was like, how can we make a profit off of what happened? Why are there t-shirts and mugs that they're selling about this? Similar thing to, and more local, but similar thing to the Boston Marathon bombing that happened here. It was like, for those of us who live here and were there, it's a traumatic event. And I appreciate the fact that they were like, Boston strong, we stand with Boston, but then they commercialized it. And so they were selling t-shirts and mugs. And I'm like, then it was everybody else was strong, New York strong, Charleston strong. And I'm just like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. It's not, again, that's not very, it's capitalism. I think it's just, we're in end stage capitalism, most people can't get affordable housing, medical care, dental care, vision care, and we can't get access to basic needs. And, it's just terrible. I wanted to ask you a little bit, and then kind of come back to all the geopolitical politics, but I wanted to ask you, because you have your own show and you're an independent content creator now, and you're doing really well. You're just taking off, and as you should, because I love your show and I watch it. But how have you found it being a woman in independent media space? How's it been? Like, are you getting a lot of support and lift? Is it easy to get guests, or has it been a challenge?
Oh dear, here come the facts.
Okay, cool. Bring it.
It has been incredibly difficult.
Okay.
And I can say this as I do have people to compare it to, because I'm a part of RBN. So I'm on two different platforms here. One of the things I've noticed is that people tend to be reluctant to talk to women in the space. It's a big one. It's not just me.
I agree.
They're more reluctant to talk to women, and particularly, it's the weirdest thing. Like, for example, I will invite someone, whether it's for my show or for RBN, and some people will not respond to me, but then one of the men from RBN will send the same message and they'll respond to the men. And some of them will only respond to the men. That happens often, actually. So that's one of the things that I've had to deal with, like running into. Another thing I've noticed too is that, and this is why I think, I don't know, I like news and doing news and interviews, but I think for me, like I majored in broadcast journalism in English, so I know how to do this. But I think for me, interviews in the beginning is how I started out my show, interviewing people. I think if you just do interviews, then you run into the problem of eventually you run out of people like to interview. So then you're going to bring up the same people, and that's totally fine. But eventually it gets to the point where people want to see something different. And so in the beginning, I started out just doing interviews, and I got that feedback from people like, would it be, implement some different things? And so I was like, well, I've done the news before, so I'll just do news as well. And I actually do more of that now than interviews, but it's very difficult. There's a lot of gatekeepers. So there's people that I've noticed, like, for example, I can't get access to, because in order to get access to them, you have to go through someone else who can vouch for you. And what that means to people watching is that not everybody has their contact information public. Like I do. So people know how to reach me.
Right.
Not everyone does. So if they don't have contact information that's public, a lot of times what you have to do is you have to go through someone else that knows them or that has interviewed them, and they have to contact that person and say, you should go on this person's show. Other than that, there's no way, you have no way of getting them. And that's unfortunate, but that's why it's called access journalism. There's certain people that will prevent you from getting access to other people in this space.
That's so interesting. And yeah, I've run into that a bit myself, but part of, my challenge is that it's about who I am, and it's the Biden factor, I call it, because, people see me as the person that came forward about Biden, but they forget that I'm a person in the world that actually worked for a long time in geopolitics, and that's my space, and I'm a writer and I'm interested. And so of course, content creation is part of it. But like you said, it is hard. Like there's certain people I want to interview and I can't, you can't reach them directly. So it's interesting. And then, like I reached out, I wanted some balance, and I was curious, there was this intelligence person I wanted to interview along with someone else to give, a little challenge, a little debate. And he saw who I was, and he just said, I'm going to pass, Tara, like kind of sanctimonious, like, yeah, because of who I am and because he's a Biden bro or whatever. But like, it's so silly, because I think what people really value is they want to hear people with different views and, different perspectives. Like you just gave a perspective, from Boston that's really interesting. Like I didn't know that about, to be honest with you, I thought the Boston strong, I didn't know that started with Boston. I thought that started with New York. So I didn't, that's how lost it got in the whole narrative. But I think my point is that it's really important we listen to each other's, views and hear different perspectives so that we can grow and we can learn. Otherwise, we're given this one-sided lens through Western eyes of how everything has to be, instead of a more international and varied look, But one of the things, Reef, I wanted to say, I had said at the top that I wanted some audience participation. Is there anyone who asked a question in the chat for Sabby or wanted to make a comment? I'm waiting. I think Reef, your microphone is not.
Yeah. How about now?
Or something.
How about now?
Yeah. Now I can hear you.
Now you can hear my voice.
Yes.
Murphy Mack said criminals like America's neocon neoliberal corporate ruling class got to keep on top, else they might get judged, which is their worst nightmare. Not really a question, but but yeah, we've got everyone here. Noli's here, Indy's here, Les Bones is here, tons of people that we all know and love.
Love you, Noli, love you, Indy. And I have to say, Independent News Network has made it possible for me to be. So thank you, Indy. Thank you, Reef.
Yeah. So. I know Warren was here as well, saying, Putin turned off the runway lights on our Zoom. So,
I don't think it was him. It would have been the Biden administration.
Choosy Elvis had it right. You got to shoot your television to keep your sanity.
That's funny.
Murphy training us to use the word Europe all the time is a form of conditioning. US is dumb. As in this entire area of like Europe, because there's like multiple countries in Europe. JB, which I don't think it's the same JB as the RBN JB, said this is nuts. Miss Tara doesn't have more views and subs, so people want to go down there and hit that sub button if they haven't done so already.
Yep.
would be a
Yeah, and
smart
if you're
move.
watching, hit the like, hit the subscribe. I want to see more
Yep.
people.
But if there's
That's
anything,
awesome.
any questions that people want to ask Sabby or you, put it in the chat and I'll find it.
Yeah.
So, but
Thank you.
anyway, back to the show, everybody.
So back to the show. So Sabby, as far as the first time that I came on your show, which I really enjoyed, how did you hear about my story, or how did it kind of get into your world?
I first heard about it on mainstream media, and then I took it with a grain of salt. And then I started to hear about it on left independent media.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was like, oh, okay. So I was one of those people that I decided to seek another source.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But most people don't do that. Most people, they believe what they see on mainstream media, and they don't look to see if there's any other outlet out there that has this story.
So you saw all the hit pieces.
Yep. I saw all of it. And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh my God, I can't imagine how she must feel right now. To me, it's just, I think the thing I said to my husband was, it's interesting how the same people who said #MeToo believe women, now all of a sudden, Alyssa Milano of all people, of course, now all of a sudden, because it's towards a Democrat, now all of a sudden we don't believe all women and there is no #MeToo. It's just all politics.
Yeah. And you know what really impressed me about some of your coverage was how you called out the squad, and you called out the squad earlier than a lot of other people. A lot of left people were just really tentative and tiptoeing. And I have to say that I watched for a while before I made that, but it's really just been clear. They are doing nothing, like nothing, less than nothing, except once in a while they tweet something. And even that's even kind of waned off.
Well, I think the big red flag for me was force the vote. And here's the thing. It wasn't because the first initial flag wasn't because they didn't choose to force the vote. That came later. The first flag for me is when I saw Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman on CNN, and they were giving people the impression that they weren't going to vote for Nancy Pelosi. That was a flag for me. Yes. When they were interviewed on CNN, they made it seem like, I'm probably not going to do this. I was like, interesting. And then, of course, the vote happened and they went along with it anyway. That's when I was like, okay, they're playing us. Like, this is not cool. This is just theater. I felt like it was a way to get people to tune in, to watch it, to see if they actually were going to go through with this. But for me, after force the vote, and I know some people didn't like that strategy, but the fact that we were going through a pandemic and they didn't even try, that was a done deal for me. That was when I realized, I'm like, they're not going to really fight for us. And they're just looking out for their careers. Because after that, I did see a segment where Cori Bush said she did get something for her district for not voting against Nancy Pelosi.
And that's the thing there. It's performative politics, and performative politics is damaging, any chance of an agenda getting through that will benefit workers. And, I feel like, okay, when I first came forward and all of this, and you saw, I don't know, my Megyn Kelly interview, maybe, I had this feeling at that time that, well, it's terrible what happened to me. And I was a Democrat. Now, I want to be just an independent. But I thought, well, perhaps some of the things that we like or want or hope for will come through, like one or two. Okay. But because it's elite Democrats, but it's been the opposite. It's been actually worse than I imagined. And I did warn people that Biden's administration had a thing about going to war with Russia. I knew somehow, some way that was going to get pushed, and it sure did. Of course, you had Jake Sullivan who wants to go to war with China, and then you have Blinken who wants to go to war with Russia. But I knew they were hawkish, but I didn't think it would be this quick. I didn't think it would be this dire. So where do you see us now when you're looking at some of these headlines, like the Washington Post headline that recently said, we need to show that we can win a nuclear war, which was a stunning headline. Yeah. What's your thought on are we headed there, or do you think, is there some grown up somewhere in the room that's going to stop it?
I don't think Joe Biden knows what he's doing. I'm not even sure Joe Biden is actually making decisions. Like, I really believe there's somebody else making decisions and he's just going along with it. And that wouldn't be the first time this happened in this country in reference to the presidency. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if he went in that direction, because let's remember, war is actually good for someone who's a sitting president who's up for re-election, because most people are not going to want to vote someone else in during that type of conflict. However, in this particular situation, I think people have kind of had it with Joe Biden because we had to deal with the pandemic. There are a lot of people who were still unemployed. He cut people off of unemployment back in September, didn't cancel student loan debt, still don't have $15 minimum wage. There's no paid parental leave. He hasn't done anything. And now they have this whole Roe v. Wade situation. But a lot of us are bringing up the fact that that was another thing that Joe Biden said that he was going to do, is codify Roe v. Wade into law. And not only that, but it could have been done going all the way back to Obama. So people are starting to wake up to that now. And I don't see him winning in 2024. And he said he is going to run. If he ends up changing his mind and they put someone else in, I don't see them winning either. I think Democrats are going to see a one term here, just like, Trump did. And then we'll go back to Republicans and it'll just be this back and forth game. But I think what this administration has showed people is that, yes, the Trump administration was horrible. Yes, Donald Trump was a horrible president. But at the same time, Joe Biden's administration isn't that much better. They're not really doing anything for the American people either. And people are seeing that now. So that's why I'm trying to encourage
Trump
people.
didn't take us to World War III, like to the brink of
That's
World
true.
War III.
That's true.
Right?
We actually did have better relations with Russia under Trump. Now, Trump did a lot of other horrible things, but I really can't point to anything. Like when Ro Khanna says, well, we passed the American Rescue Act. There were the stimulus checks. I'm like, those actually weren't beneficial like you say that they were. The stimulus checks were shortchanged. The American Rescue Act, they stopped the child tax credit before they were supposed to. They really haven't helped people when people really needed help in this country. So I really can't point to anything and say, yes, Joe Biden was great at doing this. I just can't.
And then you see the celebrities, the usual suspects of major celebrities just praising Biden like best president ever. It's like, okay, because you're elite and you're a multimillionaire. So he did give some corporate tax breaks and some tax breaks to millionaires. And he ran on saying he wouldn't do that. He ran on saying actually he was going to tax the rich. Remember that? Yep. What happened to that? What happened to any of it? And what really gets me too is because I was always really careful about criticizing Bernie Sanders in the past. Now I'm just like, no, I'm sorry, but he supported this proxy war against Russia, giving weapons to Ukraine. I mean, he'll never get my support again. That's done. Yeah.
Bernie Sanders is kind of like, he's the politician that really brings the young people into the Democratic Party. So he's an independent, but he runs as a part of the Democratic Party. Right. After 2016, when he saw what the DNC did to him, that should have been the time for him to walk away and to start some type of third party movement, whatever he wanted to do. I felt like that campaign that he had, the 2016 one, was actually better than the 2020 campaign. Absolutely. Some people disagree because the 2020 one got more attention. It was more commercial attention, but 2016 was the revolutionary campaign. Right. That was the revolution. 2020 was just like, nah. You're still talking about some of these things, but I noticed he stopped calling out the corruption a lot more in 2020. He didn't focus as much more on the banks, and he tailored his campaign to the person he was running against, which was Donald Trump. So he used a lot of terms of, we got to get rid of this racist, sexist president, instead of focusing primarily on the class issue and the corruption. And I think if he would have stuck with that same message that he had in 2016, I think maybe he wouldn't have lost some of those voters from 2016, because some people that voted for him then did not vote for him in 2020 because they felt like his campaign changed. So, but Bernie Sanders, what he is doing is he captures the young vote. So he gets the young people to come out and they vote for him. And then he knows he's not going to be the Democratic nominee. The DNC has already decided he's not going to be the nominee. So then his job is to tell people, go ahead and vote for the person that I ran against. Vote for Hillary Clinton so you don't get Trump. Vote for Joe Biden so you don't get Trump. And it's kind of disgusting when I look back on it, because if Bernie Sanders really wanted to challenge the establishment, he wouldn't have ran as a part of the Democratic Party.
Yeah. And now going back to, to Roe v. Wade, and I agree with what you're saying about Bernie Sanders. I'm very disillusioned and disappointed, especially, one more thought on that. What really got me is you had people donating to him that had no money to donate.
Yes.
I mean, they were, and he took that money and then dropped out. I hope people don't get fooled again, because it's a waste of time. It's a waste. He needs to just walk away. But going back to Roe v. Wade, I was having this discussion with someone about how the timing, of course, is suspect, right? I think it was Misty. Yeah, Misty and I were talking about that. The timing is suspect of how it got leaked. It's a first leak of a full opinion in 60 years, right? There has been some leaks, but not of a full opinion. And the timing was in time for the Democrats to fundraise before the fall midterms. And they did get a bump. They got a bump in fundraising. I don't think that's going to sustain. And now you have them coming out and defending Kavanaugh. And remember, I don't know if you saw that, but Psaki, the White House press secretary, telling people not to go to people's houses. Oh, well, yeah, we're going to go to your house. We're going to go to all your houses soon.
They're just saying that because they don't want people to go to their house.
Exactly.
And I'm glad that people are protesting outside Kavanaugh's house, but I also think people should be protesting outside Henry Cuellar's house, outside Nancy Pelosi's house, outside Obama's house, all the Democrats that go along with this, Tim Kaine's house. Why aren't they, so that will make it more of, I think that will really open people's eyes to the fact that it's not just Republicans in DC that are against abortion. Now, I think it's ridiculous that we even have to have this discussion again. It's 2022. I think that's ridiculous. But why did this happen to happen during a midterm year when Joe Biden is polling horribly? He's dropped significantly with the African-American vote, which he needs to win. And Democrats are probably going to lose the House and the Senate this year based on what I've seen so far with the numbers and the candidates. So now all of a sudden it's, okay, this is the fear issue that we're going to run on this time. Last time it was, you have to vote for this person so you don't get Trump. Now it's, you're going to have to vote for Democrats. Otherwise, we're going to lose women's rights. It's always something. Right.
It's always something. Yeah. Blue, no matter who, and remember, like someone put out a meme that said blue, no matter who raped you, which was really, but it really sad and graphic, but absolutely true. I mean, it's the lesser of two evils. That's an old, nobody, that shouldn't even be a thing. There's so many talented progressives and other people that really want to do some really significant change. Why aren't we lifting them? Why are we lifting these old, look at Dianne Feinstein. She's practically fossilized in her seat. These congressional seats were not meant to be lifetime appointments, and that's how they're treating them. And someone had brought up Leon Panetta and how now he's working with Raytheon, which is, as you know, the weapons manufacturer. His son, Jimmy Panetta, is now the congressman of the district that I used to live in California. And it's so it's just like royalty. He passed it down to his son. Why isn't someone else able to do that? What is wrong with our system that we've gotten to this almost, it's just very elitist, and it's just very, I don't see it improving at all right now. I don't know if you do, but the Roe v. Wade thing. Yeah.
A lot of it's all controlled by money, all of it. I mean, and these political dynasties are incredibly dangerous. Nancy Pelosi, her father was a politician. She's a politician. Gavin Newsom is related to Nancy Pelosi, I think through marriage, per se. And so the Clintons, the Bushes, like these political dynasties have just got to go. Even the Kennedys here, and there's a whole bunch of stories about the Kennedys here in Massachusetts that people just don't know about, that are not good stories. So I think you really have to vet people. And what I mean by that, if I look at someone like AOC, the story that she gave about her background was not true. I should have done more research back then. But if I would have known that she had worked for Ted Kennedy, I would have never given her money. Never gonna, nobody gets that.
Tell our audience more about that. I don't think a lot of people knew that she worked for Ted Kennedy. When did she work for Ted Kennedy?
So AOC went to Boston University. I used to work at Boston University. So what a lot of people may not realize is that the story that came out about her, that she was a bartender and she grew up in the Bronx, that's half truth, right? So she actually grew up in a suburb outside of the Bronx. Her parents bought a house. Her mom cleaned houses. Her dad worked for an architect company, but he was actually the president of the architect company. So yes, her parents may have started out in the Bronx, but she grew up in a suburban upper middle class neighborhood. And she went to Boston University, and working at BU, especially as part of admissions, Boston University is very particular about the zip codes they select when they recruit students, right? So when I found out she went to BU, I was like, well, if she's from the Bronx, then she went to the Bronx Science and Math School. No, she didn't, because at BU, usually when they recruit students from the Bronx, they recruit them from that school. And so it's kind of like a charter school. So when I found that out, I was like, something's a little off here. Then I did more research. That was when I found out that she interned for Ted Kennedy. And for people who don't fully know who Ted Kennedy was, Ted Kennedy, part of the Kennedy family, he actually, and this might blow some people's minds if they're not familiar, Ted Kennedy killed a woman. Now, this was years ago, admitted to it, didn't serve any time, wasn't even arrested because he was a Kennedy. They made a movie about it. It's called Chappaquiddick. Happened right here in Massachusetts. And then later ran for president. So she interned for him. And if I knew that, because when they said that she just came from the Bronx and she was a bartender, et cetera, they made it seem like, here's this poor Latina girl that came from the Bronx, and if she did it, you could do it too. That wasn't true. She already had political connections. She grew up in a suburban community. And if I knew that, I wouldn't have donated money to her. They made it seem like she was Sandy the bartender, and people don't know that she had a startup. She wasn't just a bartender. Like the kids that graduate from BU, they don't just go and become like bartenders. They usually go on to big things. So if I knew those things about her, I wouldn't have donated money to her. I donated money because I felt like she grew up a certain way and she needed the money, but she didn't really need the money.
So I was aware about the negligence case about Kennedy. I think a lot of people aren't aware. And as you know, I actually worked, when I worked for Biden, I actually volunteered at the Robert F. Kennedy Memorial. So I was at the 25th anniversary. So I did I don't know if you heard that part of my history, but I actually had a good experience with the Kennedys. But in fact, one of them tried to protect me and you know, about what I was going through with Biden. But again, there's this systemic thing about, like, one story that came out about the waitress sandwich. I don't know if you heard about that. That was Dodd, and that was Ted Kennedy, and that was Biden as well. But a waitress was sexually assaulted, and it was at a Capitol Hill restaurant, and they would go and have what they called waitress sandwiches. And she went public, talked about it, I guess reported or tried to, and then it was silenced and you know, pulled away. So you know, Dodd is a huge Biden supporter, and they all kind of cover for each other, but the misogyny was so deep that during the time I was there was a Washington Post, I guess, investigative report of the Hill in general. And I guess 70% of Hill staffers were reporting sexual assault and sexual harassment. But there was no I didn't read that article at the time. I found out about it when I came forward later, and someone had found an archived article and said, hey, did you know that was while you were there, this was going on? But all I can tell you, Sabby, is that when you're in the middle of it, when you're like on the hill and you're in this environment and you're just trying to make your way and you have all these ideals, it's really, back then too, there was no Me Too, there was no vernacular around it, right? Like nobody talked about it. It just was what it was. And, I agree with you. It's the corruption is something that's just systemic, and the way they kind of make someone's past a certain way, to make them more palatable or make them seem more vulnerable. Like they always made Joe Biden seem like he was working class from Pennsylvania. No, he wasn't. He was very elite, and he was a senator when he was in his 20s and had an extreme amount of power, very young, and never really learned how to use it without misusing it, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I always tell people, like, please do your own research, especially like when these candidates are running for office, please do your research on them.
Yeah, like they're telling us to vote for Democrats, but Biden was against abortion and pretty much spoke about being against it for a very long time. He's lukewarm about it, and so is Pelosi, and they're both Catholics, and the Catholic Church is very kind of enmeshed in that whole thing. So, that's it's just amazing. And then of course you had Pelosi and Bernie Sanders back some Democratic candidates that are anti-abortion. So there you have it. So when you hear people saying vote blue if you want to protect women's rights, it's a lie. It's a fallacy. So what else is kind of coming across? Like, what do you have on your horizon? What do you have coming across that we should be paying attention to? Because I look to you sometimes for news now and what's going on in the world. So thank you. Well, what's coming across your radar?
Oh, I'm doing something different this Friday. I'm actually going into Jamaica Plain. It's a neighborhood in Boston, to see if I can get a discussion with Mayor Michelle Wu. She is not favorable right now. She won last year, and this is in reference to the Boston Housing Authority. So again, she's given the green light for developers to come in and to purchase a housing project, which is not supposed to be privatized. She's given them the green light to privatize it, which means they'll come in, they'll make it shiny and new, and the people who live there will be pushed out. Just more gentrification that continues to happen here. So I'm going to that event to see if I can get some questions with her about why she continues to allow these big developers to come into the city and to buy up these housing properties and to push working class people out of Boston. It's become like a professional city now. So that's going to happen on Friday. News for the rest of this week. I have a couple of interviews coming up next week, so stay tuned.
Okay. And then as far as like homelessness, how is it in Boston? What are your numbers? Do you know approximately?
I know I can only tell you what I saw, because I don't even think the numbers that are being reported are accurate. Okay. When Rome came up here, we did Tour for the Poor. This is a couple weeks ago. It used to be the homeless population in Boston was right outside the methadone clinic. And that made sense because that's where they get their treatment. Mayor Wu came in and did a sweep. So push them out. And when they do that, they take their tents, right? So that was the number one requested item from homeless people here was tents. They need tents. So now that homeless population and many more, they are outside of Boston Medical Center. There's a little side street there. It looks like a mini Skid Row. And we've always had homeless people here, but I've never seen that many, especially all in one space. So we did Tour for the Poor there, give them food, clothes, hygiene products. And what I want people to understand is some of the people, they're not there because they were on drugs. Some of the people are there because they were evicted during the pandemic, or whether it was last year or the year before. Like some of those people, they just lost their home and they have nowhere else to go. The shelters are full. You have to get on a wait list to get in. And then the rules are pretty strict to the point where some people can't stay there. If you have a job in the evening, well, they have a curfew. So you may not be able to stay there. So there's all of those types of restrictions that go along with it, but it's happening across the United States. My parents told me in South Carolina, the homeless population has also increased. DC, it's increased. New York, it's increased. And again, like, I don't see any of these politicians trying to do anything to solve the poverty issue. So now, instead of trying to figure out how can we help them get off the streets, we have more police. When we went there to do Tour for the Poor, there was a police car pulled up and he just sat there and watched us the whole time. When I was at the Boston Common for Earth Day, there was a police car like on every spot at the Common. And I'm like, where'd all these cops come from all of a sudden? It didn't used to be like that. I think that came from New York with what Eric Adams is doing in New York. So it's that is actually not solving the problem. So they just keep
criminalizing. They're criminalizing poverty is what they're doing. And, and it's like what we're coming up with, which back to Roe v. Wade, one of the things that came out of Louisiana, because they're poised to, of course, ban abortions, they're going to criminalize it. So not just the doctors doing it, but they're going to make a murder charge for a woman that gets it. And then there was another state, I'm not sure it was the same one though, maybe it was Mississippi, a representative wanted to investigate women for miscarriages. I mean, we're just going to almost a dystopian fascist state. And the homeless, what you mentioned, I do happen to know the national homeless numbers, which is close to 700,000. And I think you're right. I think the numbers are off. I think it's more because it is a very hard population to, get an accurate number, especially when it's growing so exponentially. And you have rents that have gone up 20, 30%, even more in some areas in this 1 year alone.
So the last year's census in 21 for Boston said that it had went down from 2020 from 2,000 individuals to like 159, so 1,591, right? And they just did one in February, a homelessness census in Boston. So that's the closest information I can get until that next one comes out. So. And I think it's done by the mayor. So, Woo really credited for part of it. So, but anyway, I just figured I'd put those 2 cents in while I young Jamie'd and pulled that up. But I can read some chats real quick before I go if you want me to.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So Mad Crab saying, yes, love the mutual aid. We're going to need it coming in the future. Phenomenal Mysticism says Michelle Wu is an opportunistic mayor. She doesn't deserve any place in public office at all. If I go back up, weed and critical thinking, or we need critical thinking. Sorry, I have something else on the brain. Blowout is a real old John Travolta movie, had the Ted Kennedy's Chappaquiddick in its story, but did not use the name. So apparently there's 2 movies there. We do have one question from Choosy Heretics, who would ask everyone, given the opinion. Do either of you know anything about the Carnation Revolution in 74? Where exactly is it from? I think it's in Portugal, right? Choosy thinks that's going to save the world. So if you haven't looked that up, you should. I think essentially involves putting people in prison for fascism. So, I mean, if we could get that, I would definitely be down. But, I doubt those military tribunals for the fascists are going to happen, myself personally. But what do you two think?
I doubt it. I doubt that will happen in the United States. I mean, we have to get enough people riled up, right? I think we still have too many people that are comfortable.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying we're right at the hour mark, so we're doing good on time.
So Sabby, could you tell our audience like how they can find you and easily and things that are coming up for you?
Sure. You can find me on YouTube. My channel name is Sabby Sabs. It's the same for Rockfin and Rumble and Odyssey as well. And you can find me on Twitter at Sabby Sabs 2. That's the number 2.
Thank you so much for coming out and joining and all the people in the chat, thank you for commenting and hanging tough with us, even when we had that little tech thing in the beginning.
We got a couple, you got a tip from Rockfin of Leonard Trust Fund saying it was fire. So
Thank
nice,
you.
nice of people to go over to Rockfin and give us some support there.
Mhm.
But I have your links down in the description, Sabby, for I think everything. So, people can go down there, and your link tree's down there, Tara. If people want to donate, that would also be appreciated. So, but anything else before we close?
Everybody keep up the fight. Mutual aid, that's the where it's at, right, Sabby?
Right.
One last parting thing I wanted to ask you, totally off topic. I am drinking green jasmine tea. And I heard that you love tea. What are you drinking tonight?
Peach passion.
Nice.
All right. What's your
Nice.
favorite kind of tea brand? What do you like?
Bigelow.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Very good. I've tried a lot, some of the Zen teas and some of the flower. One of my favorites is like a rose. It's a rose jasmine. It's pretty good.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get together and talk about the stuff over tea again. And everybody out there, do some mutual aid, follow Sabby Sabs, think critically, and push back on the empire every day. And so I'll see you next time. Take care.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
We're out.